As a pastor in that town, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that our culture is facing, and particularly what our church is facing?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think, in my opinion, the biggest challenge that Christians face could also become one of our greatest opportunities. I think the biggest challenge is that everybody seems to be really mad about something, and everybody's taking it to social media and to the blogosphere, their hashtag movements, and
Yeah.
zingers being thrown from one tribe of people to another all the time about whatever issue is on the table. And there have been articles written about how Christians can sometimes actually get sucked into that and caught up in that as well.
For sure.
I think it's actually a great opportunity for us to consider what it means and might look like to be humble and gentle in that climate. I think of a quote that the book you mentioned is sort of built around from the old writer Madeleine L'Engle. She said that we draw people to Christ not by telling them how right we are and how wrong they are, but by showing them a light that is so lovely that they can't help but ask us what the source of that light is. And so I think the world is really hungering right now, especially our part of the world, for something more gentle and kind. And of course, Christ gives us the resources for that. He not only loved him, but he loved his enemies, and he calls us to do the same, not only to be the best kinds of friends, but the most life-giving disagreeers in the world, right? And so how do we disagree graciously while also holding on to conviction and belief, in the scriptures and so on? And so I think that's our greatest opportunity, but also sometimes a significant challenge.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to go back and examine a couple of things that you just said. The book you're talking about is your new book, Irresistible Faith. What inspired you to write that book?
Really just the stuff I just mentioned. I think that, there's all this talk about how the church in the West and in America is declining and young people are leaving the churches and so on. And it's because their parents, conflated partisan politics with their Christianity or whatever. You've got all these stories and all these articles being written about millennials and Gen Z and that sort of thing. I actually think that this younger generation is probably this most spiritually hungry generation in our lifetime, and they're looking for a compass to grab onto, and for a direction, and for leadership from the generations ahead of them. And so Irresistible Faith is really, I think, a book that it really is about a lot of the basics about finding Christ irresistible, landing in a community that reflects the irresistibility of Christ, i.e. the local church, which I think is the hope of the world. And that's not just because I'm a pastor. It's because I think Jesus said that local church is the hope of the world, because that's where he is. And then I unpack three different ways of really loving the world and our neighbors in the last three chapters of the book. One through just our regular places of work and where we live and where we play. Another about just giving special attention to the poor and those on the margins, people that Jesus called the least of these, and not being shy about being public with our faith. Jesus is giving us something beautiful and attractive and life-giving to share with the world. And so it's really just kind of a call, I think, back to that, or at least it attempts to be that.